Now go.
Oh no, they caught that. Yep. So, welcome, because this is the first time I've said that, to Read Write, the Twitch book club. I am your host Sam, and this is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Brendan.
And this week we're talking about the second half of our book, The Black Company by Glen Cook.
Yep.
Yeah. But first, before we do that, we had a couple of structural announcements that we want to get out of the way.
Yeah. So for those of you who've been here before, we have chat up on the side here, and we've interacted with it a bit. But we realized that this has kind of been a learning process for us, so we're still getting used to it. But today and going forward, we're going to try and concentrate on chat more. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. We're not going to get to every single one because we are going to keep the discussion going. But if you do have questions, please ask. About the book, we're probably not going to answer too many questions about Read Write or anything like that. But if you have questions about the book, we will be talking about those.
Yeah, it's I mean, this originally just started as broadcasting a recording session, so there was no kind of implied interaction. It was going to be more one-sided, but definitely looks like there's people more interested. So
yeah, and it always and we have.
It feels weird to have people querying us or asking questions and then totally ignoring chat. I don't know. It could have there could have been two ways. Either we don't look at chat at all, or we actually interact, and I think this is the better way.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we have chat on our screen, so if we weren't gonna do that, we should just remove it entirely, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. We got a shitter got off the pot, basically, as far as the Twitch interaction goes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what did you think about this second half of the book, Sam?
Yeah, speaking of chamber pots. No, it was a lot better than the first half, I thought.
I agree.
Events actually started happening, and there was somewhat less of the things just being described or being told about it.
I also agree. It was one of those things where the chapters got closer and closer together. The time between them was shorter and shorter. So it was less
most
jumpy.
of it, yeah. There was a big jump in the middle.
Yeah.
When they were marching through that desert.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a months-long process.
It could have been.
Because they talk about there were battles between when we had the last chapter and now.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I hadn't really considered that. I still think in general though, it took place several months after the thing rather than a whole season.
So yeah, speaking of the timing of it, how long do you think the entire span of the book took from the first page to the last?
I wrote down that question as well. Well, I think there was approximately a year between the prologue first chapter and the second chapter, give or take, about a year, because they had to cross the ocean and all that stuff. So that took time, and then they were kind of established a bit and things like that.
Do you think that was a year? Yeah, okay. Between 6 months and a year, sure. It was quite a lengthy chunk of time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with just like I said, sailing across the ocean, and we are not entirely sure how big the ocean actually is, and things like that. And then I think there was probably about 6 to 8 months between that and the second or the third chapter. After they picked up Raven, there was a bunch of stuff that happened.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I meant was the whole thing takes place across maybe 2 to 5 years, right?
Yeah, I would argue it's on the end of the 5 year more than the 2, but yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I had a kind of Lord of the Rings moment at the end. It's they have traveled such huge distances, walked across continents, and yet it feels like it's happened all really fast.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't.
Hi, sheeps.
Hello, sheeps.
Yeah, and that's another question. How big do we think this continent is?
I think it's large. Like the northern continent,
Yeah.
I think is like Europe sized.
Okay. Because I think I agree. It's one of those things that like they only ever describe it as like a single big thing, but they talk about like the Eastern Front and the Western Front and like the Northern and the Southern fronts, and you're just like, Jesus, like.
Yeah, they're at war everywhere.
Well, I guess the tower must be fairly close to like the middle, probably on the eastern side.
That's what the geographic description kind of sounded like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Western Front was like their more dangerous one. It
Yeah.
was like the further away front. But I mean, I think they fight on pretty much all sides except the Eastern Front.
No, they fought on the Eastern Front as well. And actually, they were losing the Eastern Front really hard for a while.
Oh, okay, no, yeah, I'm all reversed. Because
Yeah.
it was the West.
I know, because I did
But
the
it's
same
hard.
thing. Yeah, but it's one of those things where they were talking about how like the Northern Front was the most deadly to the tower because it was going to push all the way through, whereas the Eastern Front wasn't.
I thought that was more on the commanders. But I mean, it was super vague, right? They
Yeah.
they do not describe troop dispositions, like how far away people are from one another, what, or even like travel times in anything but the absolute vaguest terms.
Yeah. Well, I had a thought about all of that that I wrote down because I realized when I got sort of most of the way through chapter 6 or whatever, I was like, you know what? The whole reason why it's described in the way that it is and what gets description and what doesn't is because it's literally how Croker is experiencing it.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if you noticed this, but like the chapters always start off real boring and then pick up really hardcore. And I think that has a lot to do with Croker just being really bored and then things start happening, so he gets really excited and like things like move along. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I feel like I took note of that as well, and my take on it was that this is very much not a character-driven story.
It's not. I don't think it is.
Like what Croker is like has basically no impact on what happens. In fact, most of the plot characters are kind of just carried through the story incidentally to the major events. They don't really have a significant impact.
I would make the argument that Croker says a lot of things about how he would like to do things, and he basically just gets vetoed almost all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. He always wants to take a much safer approach where everyone else is more gung-ho. Probably because he's the doctor.
Yeah, probably. Which I thought was another interesting thing about that, because halfway through chapter 5, I think it was chapter 5, he gets like medic reinforcements that he gets to order around.
Yeah, he gets his own traveling military hospital, basically.
Which is sick.
Yeah, so, but that kind of plays into his relationship with the Taken and with the lady.
Yeah.
I hate her name. I don't like any of the names in this. I still have objections to the names.
Okay.
I feel like they subtract rather than add character to these people.
I wonder if that's the point.
But like, how am I supposed to read a book about people I have no clue what they're like? Like, because there's very little characterization either.
Yeah.
People just pop in and out of existence, it seems like, at random. Like, it's hard to tell geographically where anyone is, even within a scene.
Yeah.
So I feel like the names just add even more confusion to that, I thought.
Yeah. But do you not think that sort of feeling of confusion is also conveyed by Croker being a soldier who's trying to record all these things about that he's only hearing through rumor and happenstance and like all this other stuff?
Yeah, and that's definitely part of it. Like, this is a book about someone, like the average Joe, essentially being pulled through one of these huge Dragonlance campaigns, or like a D&D campaign. It's the guy watching from the sideline, this shopkeeper who sees the party come in, they clear him out, and he's just left standing there with a wrecked building. Right? Like, that feels like who Croker is and who the Black Company are for the most part.
Yeah. Sheeps asked us if we have enjoyed this book so far or what.
It was okay. I liked the second part better than the first part.
Yeah.
That's about as I wouldn't honestly like with the other books where they were in a series. I think I'd say I will definitely read both another Witcher book and another like Hainish series book, but I will definitely not read another Black Company book.
Hey, Sketch. I think the more I think about this book, the smarter I think this book is.
Really?
Yeah, because I think all of these weird, confused feelings that we're having and all of this vagueness and strangeness, I think it was entirely deliberate and it's designed to give you those feelings. Because that's supposed to be what the characters are feeling. And the more
hard to...
And the more sure that they are about something that's happening, the more sure we are of something that's happening.
Yeah, so it's a success of perspective, certainly, of that as an exercise, but as a way to like get the story across, it's problematic, and to be accessible to the reader.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that entirely. But it's just one of those things that on like an intellectual level, I think you have to approach this book from that perspective and be like, what is he trying to do? And how is he trying to do it? And I think on that level, he really, like, it's very much a success.
Oh, thanks for the host, Sketchbomb.
Yeah.
Sketchbomb, excuse me.
Sketchbomb? Yeah, thanks, dude. Keep in mind that we will be discussing plot details, so if you are going to read it, there will be spoilers.
Yeah, spoil alerts for everything.
Yeah. Now go.
Oh no, they caught that. Yep. So, welcome, because this is the first time I've said that, to Read Write, the Twitch book club. I am your host, Sam, and this is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Brendan.
And this week we're talking about the second half of our book, The Black Company by Glen Cook.
Yep.
Yeah. But first, before we do that, we had a couple of like structural announcements that we want to get out of the way.
Yeah. So for those of you who've been here before, we have chat up on the side here, and we've interacted with it a bit, but we realized that this has kind of been a learning process for us, so we're still getting used to it. But today and going forward, we're going to try and concentrate on chat more. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. We're not going to get to every single one because we are going to keep the discussion going. But if you do have questions, please ask about the book. We're probably not going to answer too many questions about Read Write or anything like that. But if you have questions about the book, we will be talking about those.
Yeah. It's I mean, this originally just started as broadcasting a recording session, so there was no kind of implied interaction. It was going to be more one-sided, but definitely looks like there's people more interested. So
yeah, and it always and we have.
It feels weird to have people like querying us or asking questions and then totally ignoring chat. Like, I don't know. It could have there could have been two ways. Either we don't look at chat at all, or we actually interact, and I think this is the better way.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like we have chat on our screen, so if we weren't gonna do that, we should just remove it entirely, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. We gotta shit or get off the pot, basically, as far as the Twitch interaction goes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what did you think about this second half of the book, Sam?
Yeah, speaking of chamber pots. No, it was a lot better than the first half, I thought. Like,
I agree.
Events actually started happening, and there was somewhat less of the things just being described. or like being told about it.
I also agree. It was one of those things where, like, the chapters got closer and closer together. Like the time between them was shorter and shorter. So it was less
most
jumpy.
of it, yeah. There was a big jump in the middle,
Yeah.
like when they were marching through that desert.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a months long process.
It could have been.
Because they talk about there were battles between like when we had the last chapter and now.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I hadn't really considered that. I still think in general though, like it took place like several months after the thing rather than like a whole season.
So yeah, speaking of like the timing of it, how long do you think the entire span of the book took from like the first page to the last?
I wrote down that question as well. Well, I think there was approximately a year between the prologue first chapter and the second chapter, give or take, about a year, because they had to cross the ocean and all that stuff. So like that took time, and then they were kind of established a bit and things like that.
Do you think that was a year? Yeah, okay, between 6 months and a year. Sure, it was quite a lengthy chunk of time.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with just like, you know, like I said, like sailing across the ocean, and we are not entirely sure how big the ocean actually is, and like things like that. And then I think there was like probably about 6 to 8 months between that and the second or the third chapter. Like after they picked up Raven, there was like a bunch of stuff that happened.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I meant was like it plays across like maybe 2 to 5 years, right? Because as a GM, you'd have to have a ton of that information.
You're probably correct.
So yeah, that would be an interesting resource.
I just realized, Sheeps, that I left that on. I fixed it.
You left the music on the whole time?
Yeah, playing in the background.
Oh, smooth.
Yeah, I messed it up. My bad.
Oh yeah, we got a little Inception going on.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
I don't even remember. Dreams inside of dreams, 2 levels.
Yeah. So let's go back to my questions here. Yeah. It's weird, right? Because like they do replace them very easily, and they don't give us any of that. And I agree that it would be interesting to read the RPG because I assume we'd have to check. We'd have to see like what level Glen Cook kind of had on it, and whether or not like.
Oh yeah, whether just fabricated by some guy in an office somewhere
to
who
make,
never read the book.
Yeah, like you gotta kind of see. But it could be really interesting. Maybe I'll do that as well.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something to look at.
Yeah. So what did you think of the flying carpets?
Those were amazing. I loved the design of them. They weren't just a regular ass carpet.
Yeah, they had like a weird wooden frame underneath them, right?
Well, okay, I feel like this is a rare instance, and maybe this is more indicative of like the rest of the book, but this was a rare instance of something that I feel like the author explained or showed without telling at all. Because like it's just a regular ass carpet that floats. So if you sat on it, it'd be like trying to stand on a plastic grocery bag. So they stretch it out with this frame so that it's like taut, so you can actually sit on it, but it still hovers. It's great.
Yeah.
I've never seen that done before.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great as well, and it was really neat because, like, the entire time everyone's just like, can I even stand on that? Like, I shouldn't be able to stand on that.
Even the Taken seem like pretty cautious with these things, although they seem to have a lot.
Yeah, that was another interesting moment where Soulcatcher was like, "Stop moving! you're gonna kill us all."
Yeah, like it's gonna tip over. You're gonna roll it like it's some flying canoe.
Yeah.
And so that was it, the reveal of it was really neat, where Soulcatcher's just like, "Hey, we need to take a long trip, come with me." And he walks into the woods, and there's just this carpet in a wooden box essentially sitting on the ground. It's like, okay, is this your luggage? And then they step on and it flies away, and Raven and Croaker like practically vomit over the sides because they're they've never flown before, obviously.
Croker loses his hat and nearly dies because of it.
Yeah.
They basically have seatbelts. They tie themselves down.
Well, that was the second time, wasn't it? Or did they tie themselves down the first time?
I think it was the first time. I don't think they tied themselves down the second time.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the very end where they climb up or they fly up to the top of the tower and they have to get lifted up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that first carpet ride that takes them to a pretty significant event.
Yeah.
Like, pretty sure it's the first time we actually see the lady in person.
Yeah, and that actually is probably my favorite chapter in the book.
Yeah, that one felt the most like regular prose, like, where like you are seeing it from the character's perspective, not from the character describing their prior actions perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
Or trying to like summarize what they did, which is what a lot of it feels like.
Yeah, and we also got a lot more insight into a lot of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was one of the scenes where you see the Taken interacting with each other.
Yes.
And also the Limper, one of the Taken, on his own, like when he's unoccupied, he's just waiting.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hilarious because just like they kind of show a lot of times they're just regular dudes who also happen to have crazy magic power and are zombie wizard liches from 400 years ago, but they get bored like everyone else.
Yep.
So he's waiting and just wandering around and throwing pine cones at stuff, and just like as they describe it in the book, the picture of a man killing time.
Yeah. Well, even before that, where they show where Raven and Croker are all like, "Oh, like you want us to go assassinate a guy? Like, why?" And they kind of leave because they can't say no, so they kind of leave, and they're like, "Ugh." And Croker looks back, and Soulcatcher's just like, "Man, I just wanted to do this thing. Like, why'd you have to be a dick about it?"
Yeah. Yeah, the Saurons of this world are a lot more like personable.
Yeah.
Almost no one is shown to be really villainous at any point.
Well,
so maybe the lady.
I would make the argument that they're all shown to be villainesque.
I would say they're more just like real commanders, real people in wartime.
Yeah.
Or closer to it. Where like, it's more about expediency than about having to worry about all these super important war crime commissions or human rights. Human rights would not be a thing they'd even consider in this kind of medieval environment.
Well, they show that they don't. I mean, the Black Company actually executes an entire village to save time.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
do.
And the amount of time they spend talking about the aftermath of battles, where like they're so tired they don't even kill the wounded of the enemies.
Right.
They just leave them to die.
That was such an interesting moment of like, yeah, just like we just walk over them because we don't have time.
Well,
we can't be bothered.
That the better option would be to kill them outright, like no attempt to make them prisoners of war or anything. It's like, no, well, they're wounded and they're the enemy, so they're dead. Yeah. Or they should be. So, you stick your sword through their head and then or whatever, and you walk away. But this time they don't even have time for that. The worst option is to let them die, or to let them live, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree entirely with that. And I was very much intrigued by how much detailed description went into that last battle.
Yeah.
Like, we had troop numbers for stuff, which was odd.
Yeah, things got way more specific toward the end of that chapter 6 and 7.
Yeah, for sure. And we started to see moments of that kind of like in chapter 5 and all that, where they add details of like how many units are retreating with them and like kind of more general number stuff.
Yeah,
which was interesting. But yeah, it was so strange. I did really like that chapter though. I thought that chapter was really good. It offered so much insight into a lot of things. Like Raven straight up told us what happened with his wife.
Yes, he finally just talked about it.
Yep.
Fessed up.
He just fessed up to it. And I was intrigued by the fact that his wife had like 4 lovers, all of whom took revenge on him.
simultaneously.
Yeah, like it was kind of a thing where like they
What
were
it
in
sounds like.
some weird polyamory thing.
Or they were just other courtiers who, she favored.
Yeah.
Um, but we also saw like how these people get mind controlled in that chapter, and it's not clear what it is.
Nope.
Really, it's some sort of weird magical torture, kind of.
But I, as much as it was vague and weird, I kind of liked the way that that played out
Yeah,
because
that's the one instance where that works properly.
yeah, because he talked a lot about like losing the memory of certain things and all that, and I really liked that aspect because it made so much sense of things that happened earlier. And like the way that they work against, like with each other, sort of thing, like the way that that world interconnects politically
Yeah.
and socially, like it makes so much sense.
Well, it was interesting to see someone sort of cross the fence
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
continue to operate identically.
Yeah, I mean, she was literally really, really good, and
Yeah, that's why she gets turned, right? Is specifically because she's the most potent enemy commander.
so I'm gonna make it. Well, I think I agree with why that's she gets turned, but I actually think the only reason she can be turned is because she has magic powers.
Maybe. I mean, there's no evidence of that because we're told multiple times that this taking process is just like you can do it to anyone, even the people who are most resistant, who would be the people with the magic powers.
Yeah, but then I kind of wonder why she wouldn't do it on Croker.
She doesn't need to. He already works for her,
Yeah, I suppose.
right? Like, you don't need to waterboard your mailman to get him to deliver the mail. He's already doing it.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I Yeah, but then maybe she kind of did because there's things that he doesn't remember happening to him, and he kind of does things.
There's some sort of manipulation going on.
Yeah.
Every time he interacts with her, she kind of like seems to scoop a little bit more out of the inside of his head and kind of run through it.
And he constantly loses days.
Yeah, every time he interacts with her, you know what? And it's interesting because almost everyone who interacts with her kind of vanishes for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
including that whole taking process, which seemed to take quite a long time, but then like it felt like days, but it was maybe only minutes. So there's some time manipulation going on with the lady, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
Like she lives in a smaller or shorter, slower time stream or something, or faster.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
So, oh, here's another thing a question that I had about like she doesn't seem to quite exist on the material plane. Is the lady actually a woman?
Yes.
You believe she's actually like a human person and not this yellow eye?
Yes.
You think the eye is just giving her power, or you don't think she is actually this eye who's just
Well, I guess
manifesting?
the question is, when was she a woman? Because I think she definitely started out as a real woman, but it is, I guess, possible now that she has become this eye in totality.
Maybe, yeah.
That is possible.
Yeah, I
But
feel like she's kind of ascended beyond the normal mortal plane.
But I also think that she's a lot like the Taken in that way of like they are still kind of human, but not really.
Well, yeah, but they're definitely more attached to the physical.
Yeah, but then I like there's that whole scene where her and Croker were riding the horses, chasing after Soulcatcher and like all that stuff, and I just felt like, or even the part where she had him on the carpet, that I just feel like there was too much realism there for her to not be somewhat real.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Because every other time she just sort of materializes, so maybe those were not actually her. Maybe that was just some projection.
That's possible.
Like, is the eyeball thing, like, is that the cover? She just wants people to see it. I don't think that's the case. That's not the impression I got.
But
But maybe.
the eyeball is when she's interrogating and when she's like doing the rituals and all that stuff. So I wonder if the eyeball is like part of her magic powers.
Well, yeah, I thought it was just like she had to reveal her true form to use her full power or something like that.
I mean, maybe. Maybe.
It's so vague. But that whole section at the end, you're right, where like she falls and breaks her leg.
Yeah, right?
That took me out of it. I'm like, okay, but you're a literal golden god who lives in a giant obsidian tower and, can mind fuck people until they're your ally. So, well, how the hell did you break your leg?
So then that brings up the question of, is she not just like everybody else?
It seems like, but I feel like even the Taken could kind of heal themselves on the fly.
Yeah. I think the only reason she really didn't there was because of expediency, but
Maybe. Or she's somehow depleted from, I don't know, whatever was going, the giant battle, maybe the apocalyptic battle.
yeah, it could be. I don't really know. It's hard to say because we don't really get a feel for how much energy magic takes and all that.
Yeah.
Because do the Taken even really sleep?
I think the implication is they don't,
Yeah.
because they describe Soulcatcher just kind of sitting on a chair in the corner in their room at night, and then when they get up, she's still just sitting there.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts of the book as well, was that revelation of who Soulcatcher was.
At the very, very
At
end.
the very, very end.
So I thought that was really interesting, but it just like, so what? Maybe it'll come to play in a chat or in a sequel,
Yeah.
but it's not like it is an aha moment, like, oh, that's why all this other stuff that happened,
Yeah, to a certain extent, I agree. So here's the other thing I noticed when they talk about the 18. As far as I can tell, at least the first 3 of the wizards are all actually related, and then the next 2 that they mentioned are also related.
Well, you mean the 2 that they capture at the end?
Yeah. So in the first one, Raker is the brother-in-law of Hardin, and his cousin is Whisper.
That's true. Yeah, they mention all those weird family connections in there, don't they?
Yeah, and then Feather and the guy who starts with a J.
Now, Lord Jelena.
No, not that guy. The other wizard guy.
I don't know.
I forget his name. The guy with the spear. Anyway, he's Feather's husband, was the gist, right? Because they are newlyweds who were inducted into the circle.
Yeah.
Which I thought was telling of kind of how the circle works.
Yeah. So it depends on how the society works, right? And we don't know anything about that, but there's kind of implication that there's this feudal type nobility that goes on. So I mean that whole system is designed specifically for nepotism.
Yeah.
So that it makes this completely unsurprising, and if it operated any other way, it would actually be more shocking.
Yeah. But you'll notice that at least one of every single wizard group talks about some sort of family relation to magic.
Yeah, but I mean, people talk about people who aren't their relatives almost not at all. Like of the major characters.
I mean, that's fair. But I'm just saying, like we're just starting to notice it. I'm starting to notice a pattern, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because it was Tom and One Eye, right? At the beginning, and then
right, yeah.
And then there was kind of all these circle relations in the circle, and then we find out that the multiple ones of the 10 are also related. And it wouldn't surprise me if more were, to be honest.
I think this just speaks to the small world of like that kind of feudal nobility. that even if they weren't directly related, but they were part of like a cadet branch of their noble house or something, they would still call them cousins.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm just wondering, like, I guess I'm putting the proposal out there that magic is a bloodline thing.
It could easily be. So yeah, it is a many chlorians situation then.
Just because, like, literally every group of wizards we've met, that has been the case.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, that could be said of any group of people, though, right?
I
Like,
suppose.
there will be some connections, especially if there are people who are already, politically and economically or structurally like connected to one another, like this.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
you could be right.
I don't think it's impossible that it's like heritable, and it's certainly not something I would discount from what we see in the book. But uh, I think it's hardly like ironclad. You know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, this is another one of those things that I would like to see if there's more light on that in the second book, if that like starts becoming even more clear of a pattern, sort of thing.
Yeah. No wizard college is just you learn from your wizard dad
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well, I think you apprentice, or at least I think One Eye and his brother apprenticed.
I don't remember that.
Oh man, like
Stuff gets thrown out there so fast all the time.
yeah.
These weird little details.
If you're not
that
paying attention, you just miss it.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I mean, there's a bunch of the 10 that literally are there, and we only see for like a couple paragraphs.
I think there's at least one of them that we never see.
Yeah, the nameless, faceless.
Yeah. Well, so okay, that's another interesting one. Why does he not have a fixed name? But yeah, so it's interesting that, and he dies, right? Like he
Yeah.
never appears on screen, and he is killed in sort of the background.
Yep.
And actually, that starts happening a lot at the end, where people just suddenly start dropping like flies
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, I mean, even the
off screen, though.
even the circle, right? Like Croker wakes up and suddenly 6 of the circle are dead, and they lost another
Yeah.
take-in last night.
So I thought that was an interesting callback when that started happening, and they're like, this is one of the enemy generals, or a bunch of the enemy generals were killed by some mysterious cat-like thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, immediately goes like, oh shit, it's that fucking cat vampire, remember?
Yeah. The were leopard or whatever.
Yeah, the weir leopard, exactly. The Forvalaka.
Yeah. But I mean, that was foreshadowed from chapter 1.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
knew that
when-
was going to come back.
Exactly. They capture it and like, oh, this will be useful for me later. Wink, wink.
Yeah. But didn't they determine again that the one that didn't Croker decide that the one that attacked all those generals was actually Shifter in disguise again?
Well, he says that.
Cuz
He thinks it.
Cuz Shifter has a pattern of doing that. I'm not going to lie.
Shifter-
That scene where he was the horse was the best.
That was hilarious. Yeah, the guy grabs his. Yeah, so it was the ambush, right?
Yeah, the ambush.
And they run up, or they land next to this enemy commander and a couple of his guards. They kill the guards really fast.
Yeah.
And then so the enemy commander survives, jumps on this horse and like whips the reins, and it just stands rock solid. He starts smacking it and it does not move. And he draws his sword, and then it turns into a man. Kicks his ass on the ground and kills him.
Well, it was
Never expect the Spanish Inquisition.
well, it was that moment where there's like his fingers were tangled in the mane and he couldn't get them out, and I was like, "What?
Oh yeah.
What do you mean?"
That whole scene was weirdly nebulous until suddenly the horse turned into a man and killed the guy riding it.
And then you're just like, "Oh, of course!"
Yeah.
Like,
Well, so
we knew he was there. We just didn't know what happened to him.
yeah, and that was foreshadowed as well because they specifically said that he went out ahead of them to disguise himself again. But previously, we'd only seen him turn into like other people, so it wasn't clear that he could turn into lamps and chairs and horses and stuff.
I'm pretty sure he can literally just take whatever shape he wants.
That's what it seemed like. And but more importantly, it's not just an illusion. Like he is that shape.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
Which is weird because a lot of the magic prior to that seems like there's an effect and there's the illusion of what you see.
Yeah.
And they're two different things.
I think Soul Catcher is also different for that.
What do you mean?
Well,
We don't see Soulcatcher do a lot of magic.
you only see it once, as far as I can tell. Unless those green tendril things were also her, which I think it's implied that they are, but I don't know if that's explicitly
Yeah,
stated.
they're coming off someone's magic carpet.
Oh, okay.
But it was the person was too high up for them to see. But yeah, they thought it was Soulcatcher.
Yeah.
And that would make sense given like the betrayal subplot that comes out.
Yeah, and there was another time later when it was where Croker saw something similar, and he associated it with Soulcatcher, specifically in that instance. So it's implied that was her, but I'm not entirely convinced because her magic is actually really badass.
What did she cast the giant flying ghost, the black sheet ghost that killed a bunch of dudes?
I think she turned into the Black Sheet Ghost that killed a bunch of dudes.
Okay. Yeah, that was the other way to interpret it but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's very quick description, but I think it was one of those things where she kind of let her magic go, and she turned into this giant ghost that just enveloped them and then ate their souls. Because he states specifically later when she talks to him right afterwards, she's using the voice of one of the dead people she just killed.
Oh yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed by the reveal at the end as far as Soulcatcher goes, that they took the helmet off and it was just some regular woman inside.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't even all freaked out and deformed like the other guys.
No, but she had the exact same face as the lady.
Yeah, and that was like, I don't know, for me kind of an anticlimactic thing. I thought it was like you're going to take it off and it's just going to be this constantly shifting face of all the people that she's consumed or something.
That'd be cool.
And it was just a dead woman. Just some regular dead lady.
But I guess that kind of goes with this theme that we're going with of like, they're kind of just regular people.
Yeah. I don't know. Every time it seems like a little bit of a letdown because they build them up so much. They're these world-conquering undead evil people, and then they just trip and like stub their toe.
Yeah, but then Croker kind of gets used to them and stops being as afraid of them because he's just like, whatever, I don't have time for this.
That's definitely interesting. Where Croker, the time when the limper breaks into his house and Croker just starts making him tea because he doesn't know what else to do.
He's like, whatever.
I think that was actually in the first half, but
it was like that moment where like the lady summons him again and he's just like, fine, let's go.
Yeah, it's early in the morning. It's like, oh, come on.
And he specifically states, he's like, there's only so afraid you can be. Like,
yeah, he's reached peak terror and he's not coming back down.
Just like, whatever, whatever, I'll be fine, I guess. If she kills me, she kills me. What am I gonna do about it?
Oh, so there was another like plot element that I thought was interesting but didn't play out too much. It was the comet in the sky.
I thought that was really cool.
So portentous, obviously, like that's a pretty common sign of change and whatever.
Well, they had been talking about that prophecy for a while, right? Like they started talking about that early in the book, and I honestly think that the comet was kind of mentioned in the first chapter as being a portent, but not this specific comet per se, but just like that was a thing.
Well, they mentioned more than once that like a comet is associated with
the prophecy of the White Rose. Yeah.
And then it's usually a good sign for them and a bad sign for the Dominator and the lady.
Yeah.
So there's that woman who was the supposed reincarnation of the White Rose.
Yeah, you're talking about the fake one, right?
The one that they are pretty sure was fake. We don't know.
Well,
the one who gets killed.
That's fair. The one who gets killed, yes.
So I felt like
I was gonna say I loved One Eye in that scene.
what? Who's just like, man, you're not even trying,
Yeah,
right?
he's like the guy beside her is making all the lights. Like,
I can
come
see
on.
all the strings. Your mouth is moving. This is the worst ventriloquism.
It's like, what kind of magician are you? Like, come on. There's no showmanship.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting, but it also something we see towards the end of that chapter is that maybe we know who is the reincarnation of the White Rose.
Yeah. In fact, I'm pretty convinced that that was the case because I was very sure when I first heard that prophecy. Like, I was like, it's gonna be this way. And then they did a really good job of kind of like making it seem like I was crazy for the entire book. And then at the end, I was like, no, I was right the entire time.
Yeah, Sheeps. That's totally what it's like. If there were like fire houses of blood shooting out of some of these people in the battle descriptions, it would totally be a B movie.
I would agree with that. It's got
Ash
like
versus the Evil Dead, but zombie wizards.
and all the bad guys wear masks in that weird B movie way.
Yeah. Oh, they totally are wearing like the Jason and Freddy masks, or like the, just all torn up flesh and looking spooky for just the sake of looking spooky.
Yeah, like what was it? The Hanged Man. Like he had that like crook neck, like he had been hanged, and he had like the bruises and like the weird blue face and everything. That was creepy as hell.
That was really weird. Like he's still dead, or they all, I don't know, the life and death conundrum for those guys.
And they talked about it a little bit at that point where they were saying like, was that an effect of them being dead for so long, like the 400 years they had spent underground, or was that like just how they were when they got turned, or what?
I don't know, and it's not clear because they definitely seem to be able to heal themselves most of the time, but these things they seem to leave in place, or at least some of them stay weird looking. Some of them aren't really.
Yeah, though I kind of consider like there's one specific thing that's always kind of part of them, like almost like a tell of sorts.
Yeah.
Because like Soulcatcher is the voice thing, like that was one specific thing, and then like the Hangman is the neck thing, and Limper is visually scarred, so like if the limp is part of whatever happened to him to make him scarred.
Well, and his face was all rotted off as well.
But I think I think his limping injury is an effect of whatever happened to him to give him those scars, or like that rotting face.
Do you think, or was like, so the Limper is like a newer name? He was in the previous domination like known by some other name, or do you think it happened then?
Well, I think that we explicitly know that none of these are their true name.
Right, but that, I thought that was more like a magic kind of quote unquote true name where it's some like the name of the wind, it's not a name.
I definitely don't think that those were their real names.
No, well, obviously they're not their real names. I don't think we heard anyone's real name.
Darling.
Oh, or Elmo, actually.
That might actually be his real name. That's true.
One of the only characters who's just got a regular name.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Croaker, the Lady, the Dominator, Ted, the Hanged Man, Frank,
Yeah.
the roster for this battle.
Yeah.
I'm going to need Bone Gnasher and Frank to go down to the break room and restock the machine.
Yeah. Bone Gnash. Yeah, with the cool filed teeth.
So, okay, that's another question. Do you think he had filed teeth, or do you think he had a giant-ass freaky mouth, like a monster head?
I think he had a
monster head.
I definitely think he had a monster head.
I think he was one of the ones who's described as like basically being the least human looking.
Yeah, I think he was very much a Killer Croc sort of style beast where, he's like 8 feet tall, really, really strong, bites things.
Wait a minute. You're basically just describing the Rock.
Maybe
less biting. Can't be sure, but everything else fits.
But yeah, like I think yeah, like the Killer Croc sort of style of like that weird not human pointy teethed thing that like rips and tears and bites.
Some just anthropomorphic enough monster to seem humanly intimidating, but at the same time with all the freaky animalistic stuff.
Yeah. Which does beg the question of what does Moonbiter do?
Yeah, that okay. So that's another one that we didn't meet in person.
We kind of saw Moonbiter, but it was a lot like less than the others. Like,
Was there a description for Moonbiter?
yeah, because we kind of got to know Moonbiter as a commander a little bit, because like Moonbiter did things in the battle that like explicitly were stated that they did.
Yeah. Like, but I don't think there was ever like a face-to-face conversation or a physical description given.
No, not at all.
So, yeah, Moonbiter. Like, what is that? The rest of them are like, semi-descriptive. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
This guy just sneaks up behind you and gives you a little nip, or like what?
That and Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler's easy. He just fishes a lot.
He just
needs worms.
fishes a lot.
It's just a weird name that stuck, you know?
I wonder if he has a darkness or shadow thing.
Moonbiter?
No, Nightcrawler.
Oh, probably, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most obvious thing, and most of them seem to be the most conspicuous thing, you know? Like, there wasn't a lot of, or not necessarily a lot of subtlety to it.
Yeah.
Which was maybe because these are, like, the names attributed to them, rather than, they're more descriptors than anything else.
I definitely think so, because there was a point where Bone Gnasher was also described as Bone Crusher, and they also call the hanged man Crook Neck.
Mm-hmm.
Crooked Neck, because his neck's crooked.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Just in case you didn't get the obvious thing.
I was really confused for a bit, and then you explained it, so I'm good now.
But yeah, I don't know. It was one of those weird things of like, I assume it is descriptive of something that they do, because it has to be, because every other example of someone we've actually met has stated that it should be. Because like Stormbringer was real, Limper made sense, Shapeshifter made sense, Soulcatcher totally made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Though it took a while to kind of get used to actually figure out why it made sense, but it did. Stormbringer made sense.
Yep. There was another one that was really obvious that I cannot remember, but
yeah, I don't know. It wasn't Whisper.
No, but the like rebel commanders seem to have descriptive names, but in a different sense.
They had all weird noun names.
Yeah,
like sort of thing. Like,
or well,
I guess there may be verbs.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on how you're using that there.
Yeah,
but yeah, they had names that were less like descriptive of what they do and more of their like character. It felt like.
Yeah, so who do we have the enemy commanders? Raker, Whisper, Linger, Moth, Seidel, Harden, Parcel.
I also feel like these were just randomly generated words. And then they were just like given to characters as names, because like that list you just rhymed off, like those are so bizarre. Yeah, good old Moth. You just trust that Moth. Go towards the brightest army.
Yeah, the only one I thought was kind of neat was Parcel, who apparently committed suicide to avoid being captured.
Yeah.
And we kind of got to know Raker, but he was a dick. And Whisper was actually pretty legit in general.
Yeah, and Harden as well.
Yeah, Harden as well. Harden was definitely described as a badass for the 5 minutes he was on screen.
Yeah, and the horrifying like end that he came to. Which was
really solid. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my god.
Just owned by your own horse.
But what are the odds that he would pick that exact horse, right? Like, it was just like a whole...
Well, I assume the Shapeshifter somehow got rid of his horse and replaced it.
Right.
With himself.
That would make sense.
Right?
And he tied himself up somehow?
I don't know. So yeah, because when he changes back, he doesn't have any of the horse gear. Like, he's not wearing a saddle. Or at least they don't describe him as wearing a saddle, do they?
I don't think so. I think he made the saddle as like part of his like shapeshifting.
But that just raises further questions, right? Like when he's in the stable and they go to get the like how long?
But it's not a stable, right? It's It's like one of those like horse lines that is just like tied to a peg, and they don't actually take the saddle off necessarily.
That's not. But you don't just leave the saddle on. Like if you're waiting overnight, you take the saddle off the horse.
I guess. I don't know.
You 100%. You definitely would. That saddle does not stay on 24 hours a day.
Well, fair enough, but maybe he replaced them after they actually put a saddle back on. I don't even know.
But, like the timing of it, just like how that actually happened.
We have no idea when he got here. He could have gotten there like 5 minutes before.
That's true. Yeah, like while he was bickering with the guys in his other guards or whatever.
Yeah.
He could have replaced the horse somehow right then.
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe he was always the horse.
Maybe he was always the horse.
Yeah, there was never a horse. It was only shapeshifter.
Yeah. Well, there is a magic horse, right? Maybe. Feather's horse.
Yes, yeah, that was the not technically flying, but descending at reasonable speeds.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things that like Croker was just like, this horse is pretty cool. It must be good.
Well, it jumped down the 10 meter or 30 meter. How big was it? The escarpment they made?
No idea.
Like at the end, they described the dimensions of those things, but they were huge anyway.
Yeah, feather horse is what I said, because it is Feathers, who is a person's horse.
Feather Horse, the less popular song that came out after Thunder Horse.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I honestly had no idea the crazy amounts of engineering that went into that tower.
You mean the siege works that they have?
Well, like there was 9 trenches and 3 walls leading up to a pyramid that went inside the tower.
Well, okay, so it was they had the tower. It's like a long triangular, like a river delta, right, of clear terrain, getting narrower as you go up towards the front of the tower.
Yeah.
And then they divided that into 3 escarpments. So there was like the bottom one where the entrance is, then there was like another one up here that was a sheer cliff,
yeah,
and then another one above that, and then the tower behind it, and I felt like the pyramid was between the front of the tower and the top edge of the top escarpment.
Right, so the pyramid was freestanding in between like the gate to the 3rd escarpment and the tower.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's no gate, right? They built the escarpments up so they're not accessible.
Fair enough, but you know what I mean. Like it's in between.
Yeah. I felt like it was an earthworks structure, a defensive thing right in front of the gate as their last ditch effort.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Sheeps.
Yeah, thanks, Sheeps. And yes, you might say lol a couple times.
It's all good. Yeah, I didn't understand the siege thing like at all, but I assume it made sense in some way.
That was the thing that made the most sense to me because it was very vividly described compared to everything else.
I just had a hard, like there was so much detail in that one specific section that I just had a hard time following it.
Really? Oh, that's fascinating because I had the exact opposite. Like it was so much more comprehensible suddenly when they're describing what's actually going on around.
I guess I kind of got used to the whole vagary thing and was just going with it, that my brain just wasn't ready for all of this actual detail. So I got like overloaded.
Well, the defensive structure was like, it sounded pretty real. Like that would...
Yeah. Oh, it sounded really legit. It sounded really legit, and the way that they defeated it sounded really legit. Mm-hmm. And the way that they had it defended sounded really legit. Like it just... I agree. I think the tactics and the way that it was built and all that just made sense.
Yeah, now if the entire rest of the book had been like that, it would have been awesome. Because that particular chapter was really good.
I didn't like that part that much, to be honest. I honestly didn't. I did like that chapter in general, though. I thought that chapter in general was solid, but I didn't super love that part.
Interesting.
I did like the part, though, that they were describing all the troop numbers and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that stuff because I kind of got a better feel for like what was going on.
Yeah, and we finally got like confirmation that the company is definitely 100% under 1,000 people because they recruit up to 1,000.
Yeah. Oh, and they also mentioned a bunch of extra sergeants in those chapters. Like chapter 5 they did, and going forward, because there was also Candy was a sergeant, and there was two other ones. There was I have them written down here. Give me one sec. So there was Candy, and there was Carp, and there was Match.
So again, I feel like there was a list of words, just random words that were assigned. 'Cause everyone's name is like that, like 100%,
Yeah,
except for Elmo.
except for Elmo. Yeah.
Maybe there were just like Muppets in that list too. I don't know. I can't confirm or deny.
Yeah. So the company history is like a real thing, and they're all about that kind of tradition. So Croker does that one scene where he starts reading, and I thought this was a hilarious play on sort of the way that people read the Bible and all that. But where he's like, "Yeah, this is a reading from the book of such and such, as written by these four analysts. This reading comes specifically from this specific period of this analyst when they were doing this battle." And he goes and reads it, and everyone kind of has a weird religious experience about it. Even Raven, who just kind of comes in and goes, "You know, that was real good, man. You made me feel like a brother."
Yeah. He finally like felt like he was one of them, or admitted that he was one of them, and not just there as a temp guy.
Yeah. So my question was kind of, we're assuming that the annals are like journals, right?
Yeah, books, tons of handwritten books.
Yeah. How does he transport those?
Carefully. I don't know. It would have to be in some sort of big cart, I assume.
Right. So he's like literally carrying around like across all these battlefields.
It'd be dozens of books, though. Yeah. What are the logistics?
Like
of that?
that's my point. Is like there's no way.
Hundreds of years of stuff. Like unless it's in some crazy shorthand.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering if it was like some sort of crazy like analyst code that only he can decipher.
Yeah, and there's not even some place where you could like sequester these things. They don't have a home base or like,
right?
I don't know. Unless it's
and they've
not
never
an oral tradition,
and they've never
specifically...
really. Yeah, he specifically writes things down.
Yeah. Well, I think this speaks more to problems left unconsidered by the author in the first book.
I mean, potentially. I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I just, because everything else was so deliberate, I kind of wonder.
I did not get that level of deliberateness from this book. There were some like big instances of that, like big splashy moments, but overall the world just, it didn't feel like there was much world there to be on purpose.
I mean, maybe that's just me being like I'm on that like English class level of like I'm so far past what the book is actually doing that I'm just
on my level book
where I'm just like reading things into everything, and then the author will just be like, "No, I just forgot, man. Sorry."
That's what it. I'm with you. That's what I think is going on here. You're reading way too much into it.
It's possible. It's totally possible.
But I'm prone to like double second guessing myself on that kind of thing. Like, oh, this must mean this. No way. I'm just making that up.
Yeah, I just like, because there's a lot of deliberate things I think in this book like that come back and are well realized even in their vagueness. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're right. I am very curious though about that. Like I do wonder.
And there's room enough for there to be both in the book, right? Like things that are heavily planned out and things that were just overlooked, like not just dropped in. Like, oh yeah, he's the analyst, but not considering how many books that would actually entail. The like bus-sized bus on, or like library on wheels that you'd have to carry with you.
You know what though? Does he ever really explicitly state that he's writing the annals?
Yes.
Because because he writes the stories of like the lady, and he's known to be a writer and write things down.
Right, but like he reads. He definitely
you're right, because he reads that thing.
The company, like he does. They specifically discuss the once a month readings that he does from some text.
And there's no, and I guess the way that the annals work, it wouldn't work if it was an oral tradition because you'd have to teach everybody the entire thing.
Well, you'd pass it down from individual to individual, but he doesn't have an apprentice,
Yeah.
and you'd have to have that
Yeah.
if it was only that. And plus, he talks about the handwriting of one of the previous annalists.
Oh, you're right. He does. That is true. I'm so curious about this. Like, is it like a trunk? He just has a trunk of books.
This is your D&D character right here. He just has nothing but books. He's well equipped to fight, but all he does is mess around with his trunk full of books. His bag of holding full of books.
Yeah, because then I wonder, like, what if they're forced to retreat and they don't have time to pack stuff up?
It's never even mentioned. Like, we're way overthinking this for sure.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
He just asks his AI assistant to reprint it from his 3D fab.
Well, I mean, theoretically, and this might be a huge leap, but theoretically, it could be a magic book.
A magic book. Like, is a book that just has infinite pages in it?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. Again, no indication whatsoever that is the case, but it could be.
Well, and the one other thing I will state about that is there's no thing, at least so far in this entire world, that was not magic because someone was casting a spell.
You mean there was nothing that was just inherently magic on its own, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Like,
that we've seen.
The only thing we saw that was even close were like the talismans.
Yeah. Well, that was someone casting a spell on them.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, right. But I just mean
lingering.
Yeah. So I suppose you could cast a spell on a book and it would be lingering. But I just mean, like, I don't.
Well, they do it to that pedestal.
Oh, right,
in the town square.
They do that.
So there's definitely like spells that you can cast and they remain in situ, kind of, without you having to be constantly casting at them. Maybe.
That is fair. Because that would explain a lot, but I don't know. Maybe not.
It would certainly answer our question of how do you transport 400 years worth of books with you?
And because then he could just literally keep it in a pouch, like in his backpack with his med gear that he could just run away with.
I mean, I don't think it's that small, but yeah, it could be if it's magic. I'm thinking a big book.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, he wears a, like...
Yeah, he's got a full backpack and bedroll and all that stuff, sure.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like that would be one of the things he puts in there, sort of thing.
Potentially. And so speaking of Croker's role as, like, the biographer of the Black Company, I thought it was interesting that at the very end, like, even after the revelation of, like, after the fallout of the battle and, like, all the corpses have been cleaned up and everything, we have that final scene between the lady and the Croker, and, like, and she basically says she wants him to be her biographer.
Yeah.
And just write down everything she does.
I like that she explicitly states, write down what you see, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, that was an interesting take, that she just wants, like, this accurate accounting of events rather than a propaganda piece.
Yeah, she kind of explicitly states that it shouldn't be a propaganda piece.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, she implies, or I guess not explicitly, she implies that heavily.
Yeah. Well, and in saying that, write down what you see, not what you want me to hear, that's very much the request for accuracy rather than spin, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I did think that was interesting.
So, how much do you think that would play into future books? Like, are they still going to be working for the Empire?
Yes, definitely.
And yeah, because they didn't get out of their contract, even though they killed.
Croker tried to get them to leave the contract, but the captain explicitly is like, I am not going to have another betrayal. We did this once. It won't happen again.
Well, I felt it was also because like they were kind of implicitly contracted to the Empire
And not
with
specifically
yeah,
Soulcatcher.
with Soulcatcher just as the agent who performed that, like signed the papers.
That's very likely. And I think Croker realized that because his argument was kind of like being like, "Oh yeah, no, Soulcatcher's dead now. We can leave." And Captain's
knew
like,
he was-
"Not really."
Yeah, he knew he was arguing a technicality. He was just trying it to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Merlin's bag. They needed that for the magic carpets.
Yeah. Those magic
Although-
carpets.
I guess you don't want to put people in or living things in your Merlin's bag. Your bag is holding. There's no air in there.
Yeah. Yeah, but we didn't really see anything that really like bent space like that. Even the things that were enchanted with very specific effects.
Inside of the tower.
You
Yeah,
think?
when-
I just thought it was a
when
really
Croker-
big tower.
Well, when Croker goes to have his audience with the lady, he walks into a room and there's a giant, like, floor-to-ceiling window, but he knows, having seen the outside of the building, there are no windows.
Oh, I just thought that was an illusion. Because it was specifically recreating something from one of his dreams. Or one of
that's
his
true.
writings. So I just figured that was an illusion that the lady had in that specific.
We've seen in other cases where things could easily be interpreted as illusion, there were actually reality. Like, Shapeshifter didn't just look like a horse, he actually was the horse.
That's true.
So
That's a good
who knows
point.
whether this room was, just looked like that, like some sort of false depth or whatever, or if that environment was physically transformed to be bigger on the inside, or have
Though
windows or whatever.
Though I think if we were going with the whole thing of the eye being her true shape, that it would make more sense for it to be an illusion. Because she would become sort of more of an illusion caster.
I don't know that she has any limits as far as we can see.
Well, that's fair.
Shooting fireballs and making magic carpet. Actually, do you think she made the magic carpets, or do you think they found the magic carpets?
I don't think the magic carpets were made. I think the magic carpets are a spell effect.
Okay, why the hell would they do it to a carpet? Like, why not
I don't know.
get like a rowboat and cast it on that?
I mean, fair enough. It's just one of those things that you need explicitly a Taken to fly them.
Well, maybe. You need someone who's got magic.
Yeah. And there's definitely a spell involved. Because,
for sure.
we hear elements of that.
But each of the Taken has like identical, like matching flying carpets.
Yeah.
Like they're constructed the same way.
Yeah.
So
I wonder.
They feel like they're made purpose built. I guess is what I'm saying. Is these are not just some dungeon crawl reward, or there'd just be one.
Yeah, no, they're definitely purpose built. I'm just wondering if it's like some sort of limitation on what the spell can do.
Well, we know there's height limitations,
Yeah.
and obviously, or a kind of, it's implied that this magic spell doesn't make them like rigid. You need that frame around it to pull it taut. So I don't know. The bounds of magic seem like limitless in one direction and extremely short in others. So hard to say.
It's weird, right? It's so weird. Yeah. And we definitely got a little bit more of that semi-officer feeling from Croker in this section, which I thought was interesting.
He goes around at a couple points, like when he receives orders, he just, as he says, cons other people into doing it, but it's because he's basically the middle boss, the manager, so he's just passing it along to other people and they do it for him.
Yeah, but he even gets his own room.
Yeah.
Like he rates his own room. He doesn't have to sleep in the bunk house with the rest of the enlisted guys.
He has his own room, he has his own staff, he has his own supply chain that he maintains. Like, he's very influential within their organization.
Yeah, and I think part of that is due when they increase their ranks, like the veterans get more responsibility.
Yeah.
Like
Then
the original group gets more responsibility because they've been there longer and they know everything versus the new guys who are always kind of not nearly as good as them.
Yeah, it's more a meritocracy, it feels like, than like a really strict rank structure,
Yeah, I agree.
except for the captain, who's always the captain and only the captain.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting that they talked a little bit about like how he never commanded 1,000 men before, or like more than,
Yeah,
or
more than the small amount of people who are in the company.
and he was like kind of fraying a bit, but he gets better at it.
Yeah, yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, his tiny bit of personal growth.
Like he like I feel like at the end of the book he was better at it than he was like in chapter 5 sort of thing. Like he had gotten more used to it.
Yeah, he was getting closer to the level of like the main generals. It felt like because he was in charge of as many men or like large contingents of men,
Yeah.
or soldiers relative to like the the Taken, for example.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So that was an interesting thing I thought is the consideration for this company. Like they start out not as just a ragtag band of people, right? Like they're put in charge of significant things pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, then that's always due to their competence, as stated by Croker. Whether he's right or not, who knows? But
Yeah, well, we see them kick kind of a lot of ass all over the continent and not get too badly damaged for it.
yep. And they always seem to be doing the right thing at the right time. And
Yep, yeah, they're always where the action is.
yeah.
But I think we know that that's mainly because they are being used as an outside person manipulated by inside schemes within the Empire.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that just becomes more and more apparent as the book goes on, and we start to discover what the schemes are.
Yeah, and they're getting pulled at by both sides.
I do think it's super interesting, though, that the conspiracy was males versus females.
Well, it was opposite gender
Yeah.
to the person in charge.
Yeah.
Like all the males sided with the lady and all the women sided with the dominator.
Yeah. I thought that was intriguing.
Well, and there was the very small hint dropped that it's like there's some greater ability to influence them,
Yeah. Definitely.
but only like one line, or I think that where that's said.
Yeah.
But so the other side of that, of course, is because we find out that Soulcatcher is the lady's sister. It kind of sounds like the Dominator's kind of trying to ditch the old model for the new,
Yeah.
which is part of, I think, why the lady gets so pissed and like takes off on her own.
Well, the lady kind of says that, like, her sister was just going to betray the Dominator as well and just take it all for herself.
I think she thinks that, like, that's what she would do, but whether or not that's possible, I don't know. Because the big evil man under the mountain isn't even revealed. Like he's still locked up.
Yeah. Though he's waving his tendrils at the world and influencing things.
Yeah, it's a Cthulhu lying in Dark Relia down there.
It did explain a whole lot, though, because I was never really sure why the rebels were rebelling.
Well, they were rebels. They were the people who lived in where that empire is now, was the implication that I got.
Right, but my point was more about, like, I know the Taken are awful people, but we've never seen them outside of wartime.
Mm-hmm.
Are they really that bad to live under? Like, were the conditions really that bad?
So you're assuming that this was like a rebellion led by the people, like commoners.
That was the implication. I don't know if that's.
Oh, I don't think that's the case at all.
Well, it's revealed to not be the case for sure.
Well, in that kind of circumstance, look what happened to all the old landholders, all the nobility who ran this empire before the lady and her wizards showed up and displaced them. Like, how many of them were kept on and turned, or how many of them were ousted, or how many of them killed? Like,
but they'd be all dead.
Why? How do you know?
Oh no, right? Because this is the second return.
This is the second instance of this empire. Like, there was 400 years.
I was thinking about the 400 years ago. I was like, they'd be all dead. Why do they care?
No, the people who have lived and occupied all this territory for 400 years and have 400 years of dynastic connections and
No, you're
barons
correct.
and dukes and whoever. Those are the guys who'd be leading the rebellion to take their land back and to get their titles back and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, the people with vested interest in both politics and the money.
Though there's only, well, I suppose there's a few of them, but we see a little bit of them in the city when Raven kills all those people in the garden thing. But I was gonna say the only real lord that we see outside of that garden is Janella or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Well, no, we see the Syndic, and we see that there's.
It's a Syndic. Oh, right, the Syndic from way back. I was like, what? I was doing that thing where I got them confused again.
Yeah, well, it's the same word used for literally the opposite thing, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we know that there are those kind of medieval institutions, these inherited titles.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how I think it would play out. Is like, you know, once somehow, and we don't see the war that starts this empire, right? Like, we don't know how.
Yeah, no, we're thrown right in the middle of it. In fact, I think it's already started before they even get to.
No, it definitely has. They know it's ongoing. Like, they talk about the rebellion up there, but we don't know how long it's been since the lady returned. Like, has it been 1 year? Has it been 20 years? They seem pretty well established, right?
They do.
To the point where it's the Empire versus the Rebellion, not the invading evil forces attacking whatever kingdom or empire.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I don't know.
Maybe more will be revealed in future books.
I would think so.
Keep reading to find out. Or turn to page 36.
Yeah.
Don't sue me, choose your own adventures.
That's terrible.
They are litigious.
Yeah. Just going through my notes here to see if there's any other questions. I think. Oh, yeah. You think he's contractually required to mention Tonk at least once a chapter?
Yes, I do. And at least one, like
it has to be just a sentence. Yeah, it just has to be a sentence.
100% of the time, it works every time, or he mentions it every time. So that game, why is it so important? Like, it is. There is more time spent talking about that freaking card game.
Yeah, I know. I'd like to get a page percentage of that.
Or the number of times they play Tonk, or the number of times that Croker is interrupted going to the bathroom.
Does he get
at least 3 or 4 times? Someone comes in, they're like, "Yo, someone needs you."
He's always doing something that gets interrupted because somebody needs to see him, because for some reason he's the guy everyone needs for everything.
Yeah, and it's definitely Croker wrote that into the annals because he wants everyone to remember that he's a good card player. He's really good.
He wins a lot.
He always wins. He walks away when he wins.
Maybe he's just a smart gambler.
A self-aggrandizing gambler.
Well, no, maybe he legitimately just I've won, I'm out.
I think that's what I actually think it is.
Yeah.
No, Sheeps. It's more like I think like euchre.
I would agree. It's like a weird euchre thing.
It's like you're trying to add your cards up to a certain value. 50, I think they say.
I don't know. I got more and more confused as they described it more, to be honest.
I feel like they were making up the rules as they went along.
Because when we saw it later, it was like Croker was just like, "Oh, I got doubles. You got to pay me twice as much money as you originally bet." And I was like, "What?"
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's rock paper scissors Lincoln Spock or whatever that game is called. You just start making rules up.
Yeah, for sure. And they're just big on gambling in general, because Raven's like, "Hey, yeah, let's bet on our marksmanship." Croker's like, "I'm not an idiot."
They're bored soldiers.
Yeah.
So they don't have much else to do other than, fight with each other, bicker, and gamble, and sleep. And that's what they spend the most description on.
They drink, whore, and gamble.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of drinking and whoring. Well, the whoring not so much. It's just
Yeah, they haven't really been in a position to do that, though there was some rape.
a little bit, definitely
Yeah,
some of that
sketchy.
on both sides.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, there's that one thing. It was like, what was his name? Whitey, where he walks by
Yeah,
with like a woman on his shoulder from this
yeah,
village that
and
they
they're all
are
just like,
killing.
"Nice catch."
And the captain's like, oh, these terrible, terrible people.
These barbarians, how dare they? My stupid
And
soldiers.
Kroger's like, this freaking captain who's a romantic.
Yeah,
What a jerk.
felt like there was so much more opportunity to kind of learn about the company through the captain because he seems so different from the people actually in it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a really tough question, and we don't have to get into it too much, but
Leather.
no. Do you think
Oh.
Kroger is a pedophile?
Oh yeah, there is that one time where he has the dream about having sex with 12-year-old children.
And he kind of feels like he's horrible, but I kind of feel like it also fits into his weird like children saving thing. Like that maybe he ran away from that and now he's trying to like not be that person.
We don't know, and I mean, we don't know how much stigma there is attached to that in this world either.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. I just thought it was an interesting observation of because they describe that dream in detail. Well, not detail, but they like give us some details as compared to the weird malaise that he has a lot of the other times.
Yeah. Hmm. Maybe. There's no
Because
no
he feels
real,
guilty over children, right? We have admitted like that is a thing.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know if that. I think
know.
if everyone that means that like everyone who has sympathy toward children is a pedophile at that point.
Yeah. No, I agree entirely. I was wondering if that was something to do with it, if that was related, or if I'm just again reading too much into a supposed pattern in my head.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to like try and save children in a war scenario. It's another thing to be dreaming about 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like those are necessarily connected.
That's fair.
And yeah, she's got a good point in this kind of historical or equivalent historical period that age of consent was a little bit more lenient and or non-existent.
Yeah, and I agree. And he when he was talking about Whisper, he said something similar to that, where he was saying she sounds like a 17-year-old girl instead of the like middle-aged woman she actually is.
Yeah,
Because apparently her voice was really hot.
that's what he said.
That's what he said. So, I'm just saying, like, again, that's another sort of thing of like 17 would totally be you're married and probably have kids.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. For the majority of the people who are only going to live to be maybe 40 or 50.
Yeah, despite the fact that many of the people company seem to be maybe older than that.
Well, a couple of them are like hundreds of years old.
Yeah, definitely. But like, how old is the captain? I think we discussed this last week, but I just like it's one of those things that like I am even less sure now than I was then.
I don't know.
Because he's got like gray hair at his temples and stuff. But that's not
there's
really
a couple...
an age indicator, per se.
No, that could put him anywhere from like late 20s to anywhere above that, basically. I think he's probably more likely in his late 30s. But,
Yeah.
like, again, we had no indication of that.
This book is definitely like whatever I'm doing, what I want, hold my beer. In fact, that has literally happened more than once in this book.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a medieval hold my ale moment. And then they get in a bar fight.
And they get in a bar fight.
It's straight up hold my beer.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. And I think there was another moment of that when they were trapped in that village, waiting for Raker to show up. I think there was definitely a few of those moments too.
Oh, you mean
the
like
where the wizards were like here, and then like did some magic.
Yeah, they go on a tear for a while, and yeah.
Yep. So that's a real thing. But yeah, is there any last things we want to get out before we start closing out the show? I think I hit
so.
most of my notes about this book.
I got through my main points, and I'm just looking at my notes here. I don't think there's anything.
Oh, the only thing I missed was
Crazy.
I thought the capitalization in this book was really neat.
What do you mean?
So the way they capitalize rebel and the way they describe rebel as like
Oh,
being a singular thing, like a lot.
yeah, that messed me up at the beginning, but then I realized it was like a stylistic thing. They're like Charlie.
Yeah. So that was neat, and they also did a thing with the lady where where they were describing her a bunch of times and used a capital H.
Yeah, well, that was a very deistic kind of depiction, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Definitely. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it was a way to make like proper nouns out of things that wouldn't normally be, or like that the rebel, the group singular of them being sort of a singular body.
Yeah, his armies. Like
Well,
they
yeah.
describe him as a masculine person of like his armies and his generals and
Well, that's interesting because it kind of works well with that final revelation that it was men versus women at the end. That it was the Dominator really controlling or at least influencing the rebel. So
oh, I didn't even
so
think of
it,
that.
the whole thing really was just this kind of macrocosm of their marital dispute.
And actually, that kind of makes the her thing even better because it means that there was
Right.
like instances of the dominator versus the lady, and they were both described with like, these proper nouns, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Like the whole war is just them having an argument.
Yeah, I mean
Like
it
the
is.
Dominator has to Dominator has to sleep on the couch this millennium.
Yeah, because she refused to revive him. Though she describes him as a slaver and being way more evil than even she is. She could very well be right.
Yeah, it could be. But again, like the bad things that happened in the former empire aren't really discussed. They just like they were real bad, they were super evil, and then they were taken care of.
Evil
So
always
it's not like
triumphs.
what? Evil
Evil.
always triumphs?
That's what Crozier says.
Yeah. I mean that's the more realistic way of looking at that, I think.
Yeah, well, I think his point was kind of this sort of like war is terrible no matter what side you're on, even if you win.
Yeah, and the world is a harsh place,
Yeah.
as he discovers,
Yep.
or he well knows by the end of
He's
that, or
still
even by the
pretty
beginning.
idealistic, though.
Yeah, considering he sees that battle, 250,000 people die, and he's still like, it's probably gonna be okay.
That's got to be a significant number of the population, right?
That's a humongous army, or I would think it is, because you're probably talking about 10 million people on that entire continent.
Well, let's be honest. The rebels were like what, 3 times their size or something?
They said 10 times.
Oh, 10 times. Jesus.
They said there was at least
Because
something like 20.
yeah, because
They say 20 to 25,000 soldiers on the lady side defending
yeah,
versus an army 10 times their size attacking.
yeah. That's like
So
a significant number of the population in that war.
depends on how big it is, like
Fair
how
enough.
much land these people are being recruited from. But yeah, it's another logistics problem. Like, how do you feed that number of people, considering when this is?
We don't even know what they eat.
They're just regular people. They eat
No,
little
but
bits
I'm
of
just
meat
saying
and
like it's one of
grass
those
and
weird things of like the food is never described.
yeah. And so okay, so this is I think my final point on this, and it pertains to the like total absence of culture in this world.
That's a good point.
There is no native culture. Nobody has names that tell you anything about them, like where they're from, what language they speak, whatever. There's no food there. There's incidentally languages mentioned, but only like two. There's Northern, there's whatever the company speaks,
There's
and there's the ancient language.
well, I was gonna say yeah. So there's three, right? Like so there's the
But there's no cultural, like, even though they're moving all across this empire from east to west to north and south, like, except for the difference between Beryl or the jewel cities and the empire, there's almost no personality to these places other than weather.
so that could be two things. Maybe both. In my opinion, one, I wonder if that's because 400 years ago the original empire wiped a lot of that stuff off the map.
400 years is a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the culture we live in now is like 50 to maybe 100 years of something that's even vaguely recognizable to it.
Fair enough.
Like across 400 years, you'd reestablish some like traditional foods. Like, does this place smell like turmeric or does it smell like basil? Like, what do these
Yeah.
kitchens smell like?
Fair enough, but I think what is more likely in my second proposal is that Kruger's just been so many places that he just does not even care.
Yeah, that could be part of it. But
Where
like
they
I
all
said, the
just kind of
names play
blend
into it too.
together because he's just on the march almost all the time and like whatever. Like it just all blends into one thing, and he just doesn't even remember what details there were.
Doesn't make a very interesting book though, right? Like it doesn't feel very alive.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose. But
So
there is a little bit because we know at the beginning the place where they go to the garden there is culture and wine and stuff like that, and
no,
then
that's not what I mean. Like a culture exists in this world, but we know nothing about it.
oh
Like they
yeah,
have.
I think well and but I mean let's be honest, they spent most of the like chapter 4 on, or I guess chapter 3 on, basically running for their lives across this nation and not really stopping in any one place for any significant amount of time.
There are ways that you can do it. You know, like the Song of Ice and Fire books are great for that. When you're in the north, you know they have a very distinct, more northern European, like a kind of British Scottish kind of feeling to the music they listen to, the food that they eat and serve, the clothing that they wear. Whereas you hear people from the far south, from like Dorne, I think that's what it's called, uh, and you know they're very much more Greek. Like so you can tell like there's more of a when you read the people's dialogue and see the description of them, you get a little bit of sense of them.
Yeah.
Whereas here you sometimes get a name, sometimes you don't, and you're just talking to this person who materialized.
Do you think the
And you're
members of the Black Company are white?
no, at least we know that
We know specifically that One Eye is not.
One Eye, yeah, and no, I think they're a mix of people from all over the place.
Yeah. Because I think
As
when they were
as
describing Raven, like Raven being their only Northern brethren, I think he sticks out as Sorthram, like of that sort of like white, dark hair, blue eyes sort of guy who just like does not fit in with all of these brown skinned, yellow skinned people.
that could be, but again, because we get no description of often even what language they are speaking, yeah, it's hard to even tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my biggest issue. But again, like the final chapter seemed to fill a lot of that in as much as what it covered was much more complete feeling. So maybe the second book carrying on from that would be
Yeah, this doesn't
fuller.
feel like a singular thing. This feels like it was planned as a trilogy and you had to read it as a trilogy sort of thing. Where
Maybe
this is really only act 1.
so I think it's I think this book was actually less planned than that. I incidentally, as I was skipping through the sort of end matter of the book on my Kindle, I saw in the legalese that I believe it was chapter 3, The Raker, was originally published as a short story, a standalone short story,
That makes a
and
lot of sense.
it was added with, I think they said, very minor alterations into this as a chapter. So some of it was pre-existing, it sounded like, and then a lot of it was scaffolded out from there.
That makes a lot of sense though, because I wrote it down on my list, but I didn't think it was super interesting to discuss. But when we were talking last week in the Input Output podcast about like mosaic novels and that kind of thing, because I kind of feel like that's what this was in a certain sense.
That's exactly what I was tying it back to. Is I thought it
Because the
was interesting we
beginning
didn't
was
just
very
talk about
much
that.
like that, and then the ending was not, because the ending feels like a complete piece.
Yeah, well, you know, I think he started writing and by the end had a much better idea of where he was going, and so it just felt fuller and better because like he worked out a lot of the kinks, and it just never quite got unkinked at the beginning, even no matter how many revisions.
Yeah, because the first chapter is definitely the worst chapter.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's I
first
don't,
chapter is like incomprehensible practically.
yeah. And to be honest, I think this book would be just as good without it.
Yeah, you could drop, except for the couple of little things that are foreshadowing or end up being foreshadowing, like the
Yes.
Forvalaka and that kind of stuff. You could pretty much drop everything that's not in the Empire, like them being on the boat and then like just disembarking into the mid battle.
Well, you can start the prologue at them starting on the boat and like explain the battle with the Forvalaka, like have it kind of be something that they're dealing with. I feel like you could have cut that off like right as they were leaving the tower. And have that been a really short prologue, and it would have worked.
I mean, now you're arguing for an entirely different structure to the book, right? Like
I suppose.
It becomes a non-linear narrative.
I just really hated that chapter.
It sucked. It was bad.
Yeah. And arguably the best chapters were like sort of 5 and 6.
Yeah. Even 7, which was really just a summing up, was still, I thought, even better written. Like it just flowed a lot better, it felt like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that's just me, the particular writing style that I like. But like I guess there was a lot of change over the course of the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, is that your final thought?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's all I got. Would you recommend this book?
I personally would not. I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was a lot of work to read.
I would agree. I actually don't think I would recommend this book, but I am probably going to read the second one because I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued, especially now that we've talked about it a little more. Yeah, but I don't know. I personally wouldn't shell out a lot of money for it.
Well, yeah.
Not that it's expensive, but like,
No, I hear you. But yeah, I was thinking more of maybe like getting it from the library or something like that. Like,
yeah, that.
Hey, I want to see what it's like if it's any good, and I'll give it a try, and then,
Yeah, that would be a good low impact way to access this.
Yeah.
And the other thing about this, and I just kind of thought about this, is I don't know what audience this is aimed at. I know a lot of people who read this the first time were a lot younger than we are.
Yeah, didn't Martin say he thought this book was good?
Yeah, he really likes The Black Company. Would have been interesting to get his opinion on this.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll let you know.
Yeah, well, maybe on the next podcast we'll drop some information if we talk to him about that, so you get his perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say if we could get a statement.
Yeah, record it and splice it in.
But yeah, because this is a popular book.
Yeah, I don't know if it's award winning, but it's definitely popular.
I don't think it's award winning, but I do think it's considered popular.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people who've read it. The reviews on Goodreads are all pretty popular.
Yeah.
Except for one. There's one at the very top when I saw it that was basically my opinion. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Who are these people? Like, where am I? I finished the first chapter and I'm quitting the book.
Yeah.
But most of them are pretty shining.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just not my cup of tea.
That's true. And I definitely thought this was going to be my cup of tea. Because generally speaking, I like this type of book of like a military company who like travel across the land doing these things. Like I generally like that kind of thing. I like that thing in science fiction a lot, like military science fiction. Like I'm pretty down with that. So I kind of felt like I would really like this book, especially after reading like the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is kind of a similar idea in some of it. Of that. Well, the second book, Deadhouse Gates, is specifically about that. Like it's about a military company and whatever else, right? Like, so yeah. I feel like for me, I thought I would really like this book, and then I just didn't in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed. It's not bad, but it wasn't for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Except for that first chapter, which is real rough.
Oh man, that first chapter was bad. Like straight up. That first chapter was real bad. But it got a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
It got a lot better.
So for our next book, since I think we're pretty much done with our discussion there.
Yeah, so the next book we're going to read is actually a graphic novel. It's called Roughneck by Jeff Lemire.
Ooh.
This is going to be the newest book we've read by probably a decade, maybe two.
That's true, because this was 1984. When
Yeah,
did this book come out?
the Roughneck
Yep.
came out in February.
Oh, geez, yes. So, it's the newest by decades.
Yeah, because I think The Witcher is probably the newest, and that was like 91.
Yeah, yeah. The latest story in it was 91 or 92. That's interesting. I gotta that makes me think I gotta find something that's more current as well.
Yeah,
And even older.
I would totally be down for that. We'll discuss, and you can leave comments in the YouTube and all that if you have stuff you want us to take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will definitely be
and
considering
suggestions.
stuff. Yeah, because I think our list isn't that great, the one that we've compiled. Because I look over it and I'm like, I don't really want to read any of this.
That was kind of the point of it, was books that we wouldn't have otherwise read. But yeah, now going back, it's like my interest has waned a lot in some of those.
Yeah, so that's how it is, I guess. So yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, due to the nature of our next book, we're actually going to do it across one episode period. So it's going to be in 2 weeks. That book, the entire thing.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do something a little longer after that to compensate it. That'll probably be across 3 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna read something probably in the 600-page range versus the like 300-400 that we've been doing.
Yeah.
So something a little bigger.
So stay tuned. Be June the 5th.
Yep.
Will be our next episode. Everyone tune in here. It'll be 8:00 p.m. Monday, June the 5th. You can also check out Brendan's stream here at Accidental Origin on Sundays at noon.
Yep, Sundays at noon. I will be streaming tomorrow, though I'm not sure what time yet. Because I was originally planning to stream at noon, but I might actually stream at 9 o'clock with Andrew because he's going to be working on my comic, Strangers Beyond the Door. So I was thinking that if I'm going to stream tomorrow, maybe I should stream during that block and do that. But
yeah, you're not obligated to do it once, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's also streaming at noon is the thing.
Block them.
Anyway, so it was one of those things that I was considering that. But I will let you know on social media. If you can follow me at FreakLabMishap for updates on that. I'll send out a tweet probably about 30 minutes before I go live, whatever. So.
Okay. Yeah, and for everyone who wants to listen to the audio version of our podcast, we're readwrite.podbean.com. So if you don't want to look at our beautiful faces, you can just go there and listen on the go.
Yeah.
And if you have any other desire to contact us, I guess, or suggestions or comments or whatever, you can contact us on Twitter. I am at MC Pepperpockets.
Yeah, and
Brendan is
at FreakLabMishap, like I just said. So yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we will see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the questions, Sheeps. We also appreciate that. And Sketch as well, though he's not here right now, for saying hi. So yeah, that's it. I'll see you all tomorrow. And you guys will all see Sam on 2 Mondays from now.
I'll probably be there tomorrow as well.
Okay, cool. Aren't you? Oh, you're working.
Nope. Because of Victoria Day.
Oh,
which is
right.
today.
Which is today, yes, because we're Canadian.
Yeah. I wasn't 100% sure we were broadcasting because it's a vacation day here, or a holiday.
Yeah.
In Canada.
But yeah. So, cool. We'll see you all later. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
See you later.